I would like to introduce myself. My name is Clancy Kiener, and I work at what I consider to be the most wonderful place in the world. I work at Cumberland Heights. I am an outpatient therapist in Cool Springs. I do a PM group, and I am incredibly blessed to be working here. And I'm also incredibly blessed and grateful to be here right now. Not sure how you'll feel about it, but we'll give it some time. The passage, for I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invited you in, or needing clothes and clothed you? When did we see you sick or in prison and visited you? The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of my family, you did for me. I love this passage. When I'm asked to talk about a passage, this is the one that I most often choose. It's important. I think the most important part of this is that it does not have any condition. There is no condition. It doesn't say when you visit those who are wrongly imprisoned, you visit me. It doesn't say when you feed those who are hungry, unless they don't spend their money wisely, you feed me. It doesn't say when you let a stranger in, unless the stranger is homeless and can't afford something to eat or drink, you let me in. There is absolutely no condition. And to me, this is about letting people in. This is about being with people. I mean, who here among us has not felt imprisoned by our own bondage of self? Who here among us has not felt imprisoned by sadness, depression? Who here among us has not felt hungry for God's love and still felt alone? Who here among us has not felt overwhelmed, imprisoned by addiction, or imprisoned by feeling like you cannot manage your own life? Who here among us has not felt like the least of these in one way or another? Who here among us has not at one time or another been the least of these? I have. And I found that there is no condition to helping those who are the least of these. It is honorable, it is right, it is good to help those who need help. It is good to help those who are suffering. And it is not easy always to help those who are suffering. It can be difficult to be with somebody who is feeling that depression, who is feeling that anger, who is feeling that overwhelming sense of addiction, of not being able to manage their own lives. It is difficult to know what to say. It is difficult to know when to say it. It is difficult to know when to remain silent and listen. It is not easy to be with those who are suffering, but I can tell you that it is so much harder to be the one who is suffering. A very long time ago, I lived in a place called Anna Maria Island. It's on the west coast of Florida, sort of in the middle of Florida on the west coast by Tampa. And I lived there for a few years. On Anna Maria Island, there is no mall, there is no McDonald's, there is no fast food place. I haven't been there in a while, but I can tell you that this is a place where I can be certain that there will never be any of those. And and it sounds absolutely heavenly to live on an island when you're a kid. But there really wasn't much to do. So what I did was I swam. And I would go in the ocean just about every day, and I would swim. My mom, when I was probably about 6 or 7, we moved to a little apartment called Sandy Toes. It was really called Sandy Toes, I kid you not. And it was right on the beach, and toes were always sandy there. And I went and swam in the ocean as much as I possibly could. And then one day, I went and swam in this water, and all of a sudden, this wave hit me. It wasn't a very big wave, but it was a wave that was really super powerful. And it hit me, and I went down. I went down to the ground of the ocean. I mean, it was probably like 4 or 5 feet, but still, it was pretty scary for a little kid. And I couldn't get my breath, and I didn't know if I was ever going to get my breath. And I was being tossed by this wave, and I had absolutely no control. This wave was more powerful than I was, and I didn't know if I was going to make it out of it. Well, I'm here to say that I did not die. I am still alive, as far as I know, and I made it out of it. But that really didn't stop me. I still liked swimming in the ocean. I was more careful. And then a little while later, the waves got to be really big. Sometimes, if there was a hurricane around or something like that, the waves would be pretty big. Even if we didn't have the hurricane, the waves would still get big. So one day, there must have been a hurricane off the shore, probably a few hundred miles away, and the waves were really huge. And, I was a little kid, so I can tell you my perspective is they were 200 feet tall. And they were probably like 20 feet tall. And I met a girl who was my age, and she was my friend because, I was like 6 years old. Everybody was my friend unless I hated them, and I didn't really hate many people. And if I hated them, then I liked them like 2 minutes later anyway. So she was my friend, and she was vacationing from probably Michigan because that's where most people came from there. And I thought for a little while that she was a superhero. I was pretty sure that she was a superhero. She went into these waves that were, in my estimation at the time, 200 feet high. And she kept coming out of them unscathed. So I was wondering, what superhero she was or what superhero she was related to and how I could get some of this superhero power that she had. I was amazed. I really thought she was a superhero. And she kept doing it over and over again. She would go into these waves willingly, going into these waves and coming out unscathed. And these were really high waves. So I finally asked her. I didn't ask her if she was a superhero, but I asked her how she went into these waves and came out unscathed. And she told me she goes under the wave. Well, I thought that was just ridiculous. Why would you go under something that could take your life? That didn't make any sense. Why would you go through something that was overwhelming? Why would you go through something that could have control over you? Why would you do that? Didn't make any sense. Well, she not only went into the waves, coming out unscathed, she was smiling and laughing and jumping and bouncing, and she was having a lot more fun than I was sitting out on the ocean watching her have fun. Or I was sitting out on the beach watching her have fun. I was not having fun because I was sitting there. She was having fun. She was playing in the waves. So finally, I got all of my courage up. I mustered all of my courage, and I thought, if she can do this, I can do this. And I went into the water, and I waited for when the water was shallow enough that I could go into it a little bit more. And sure enough, here comes this wave. And my thought was, this could be it. I don't know. I was scared out of my wits. I mean, the fear was just overwhelming. And I knew that there was a time that I either had to go under the wave, like she said, or I would be immersed in the wave. And who knows what would happen. So I saw this wave coming. I got my breath, and I went under the wave. And this was the most peaceful feeling that I had ever felt before. Everything was quiet. Everything was still under the wave. Everything was calm, and I was at peace. And up top, there was all this stuff happening, but I wasn't a part of it. I went under all of it. And I didn't think I was going to have that feeling. I didn't think I was going to feel the peace. but I did. And it was because of that girl who I once thought was a superhero that I was able to go under this wave. I was able to go under this wave that could have taken me down. It was because of her that I actually had a really good time at the beach. And it was because of her I lost so much fear of the ocean, so much fear of those waves. Wouldn't it be nice if life was always that easy? Just go under the wave and you'll be fine. It's not. It can be sometimes, but it's not always that easy. A couple years ago, I met a man. He had a sign that said Vietnam vet. He was in a wheelchair. He had one of those cardboard signs. So I went over to him and I gave him $20. And he started crying, so I did what any normal drug and alcohol counselor would do. I sniffed for alcohol, and I don't think he was drinking. There was nothing there, and he seemed pretty together. This man was the right age to be a Vietnam vet. I believe he was a Vietnam vet, and he fought in Vietnam for America, and now he's fighting in America. I gave him $20, and then I found that he did have a place to live. I made sure of that. He was in a wheelchair. I wasn't. He couldn't use his legs. I could use my legs. He fought in Vietnam. I didn't. His job was so much more difficult than mine. I was there with him for about 5-10 minutes, and it was hard to know what to say. It was hard to know when to say it. It was hard to know when to not say anything. But his job was so much more difficult. It is so much more difficult to be the one looking at that wave, to be the one overwhelmed by fear, to be the one who is imprisoned, than the one who is looking after the least of these. It is so much more difficult to be the least of these. It really is. But I can tell you that there is a way out. And that way out, I hope to be a part of. And that way out, I believe, I trust, and I have all the faith that Cumberland Heights is a part of. I believe that I am standing in one of the best places in the world. In this place, people have the job to help other people. In this place, people have the job to help those who are overwhelmed by the bondage of self. In this place, people help people go through the wave. And oftentimes we're told, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, don't cry, be a big girl, be a big boy. We're taught to be self-sufficient oftentimes, and we need to be self-sufficient. I mean, this is not a bad thing. We need to be taught to be self-sufficient. But sometimes a lot of that sticks. And sometimes it feels awful, it feels vulnerable, it feels naked, it feels like we're even more imprisoned when we talk about our bondage self, our addiction, our overwhelming feeling. But once we go through the wave, once I went through the wave, I was at peace. And it took me about 5 seconds to go through that wave. In real life, it can take longer, but I can tell you, it is worth it. It is really worth it. God's love is unconditional. It is without condition, and that is grace. It doesn't matter what has been done. It doesn't matter what we have done. God's love is still there. God's love is unconditional. And there is a prayer that has helped me, and there is a prayer that has helped others. And I believe this sums up the passage. It is the third step prayer found on page 63 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. God, I offer myself to thee to build me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.